Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wrestling Academy podcast, a podcast all about wrestling history with no linear timeline or trackable syllabus. So if you're a lifelong fan or you're brand new, this is the podcast for you. I am your Headmaster Michael Classic.
And I am your Homecoming King Samee. Welcome to Wrestling Academy. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. And if you're not watching us on YouTube and you're just listening to us, go to youtube.com/Wrestling Academy Pod and follow us there. Because after we get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, I will smash Michael through a table.
Yeah, that's right. We set a little subscriber goal for ourselves. We're a brand new, little baby podcast, and we're trying to grow and do all kinds of fun things. But to do that, we need subscribers. And if you help us, we'll help you by having Samee put me through a fucking table, dude.
People really need that.
I think the world needs to see me go through a table.
That's true. And also, we post clips and full-length episodes on YouTube, so it's not for nothing.
It's not for nothing. That's right. We are still the hunt for Ween Kid is on. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Ween Kid is the mysterious figure who's in the background of 90% of the shots of Royal Rumble 2008. If you need more information on Ween Kid and our hunt for, go to our website.
Hunt for Ween.
Yeah, if you want to know more about our desperate hunt for Ween, go to our
we need that Ween.
Go to our website, wrestlingacademy.university, or go to our Instagram where we've got a pin post where we break it all down beat by beat. But we need your help. If you have any clues, any tips on who Ween Kid is, do you know them? Have you seen them? If you have any information, please reach out via our Ween Kid tip line and leave us an anonymous voicemail at 708-669-4512. Again, that number is 708-669-4512.
And I highly, highly recommend you go to our Instagram, Wrestling Academy Pod, because that reel there, you get to see Ween Kid in all of their glory, making all of the things, all of the faces that captivated us in the first place. So definitely go check that out and help us find Ween Kid.
But Samee, that's the future. What are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking about the current WWE Women's Champion, Bayley, and her run at NXT.
That's right. Before she was the powerhouse that we just saw dominate at WrestleMania 40, which we went to live, and we're super stoked about it. We're telling everybody about it. Before we went live, we wanted to see where Bayley came from. And I got to be honest with you, Samee, I feel like the journey of where Bayley came from, her time in NXT, was such a rich vein of wrestling history that I was so excited to tap in and just really get to check it out. And I guess I was curious, what did it feel like to see some old familiar faces, some new exciting faces? How did it feel to jump into the history of NXT and the history of Bayley?
It felt really, really good. So my experience with Bayley thus far, outside of WrestleMania 40, which we went to and recorded two podcasts about.
We went to it live.
We went to Philadelphia. Guess why? So before we were seeing her live, my experience with Bayley was we saw her pop up in the Hell in a Cell episode with Sasha Banks. And then just in general, I starting to watch SmackDown and stuff. I've seen her doing some Healy stuff in current WWE with Damage Control. I've seen a little bit of Bayley, side pony Bayley, but not enough until deeply researching for this. And then I did see Bayley destroy wacky waving inflatable flailing tube men on your recommendation.
You've only ever seen Bayley as she is in her current form. And so what I was really excited to go back and check out is before Bayley was the leader of Damage Control, before she was this sort of cocky, conniving bad guy, before she had a war with Sasha Banks and Hell in a Cell, she was a beloved babyface who used to dress in super bright colors and had like a top side ponytail. And her whole deal was having waving inflatable tube men and giving hugs and stuff like that. And I feel like there was just a whole chapter to Bayley's story that just you had never interacted with at all. So I was really excited when we wanted to talk about Bayley a little bit more to be like, oh, there's like a whole piece of Bayley's history that you haven't seen yet. And so I was really excited for us to jump in and check it out.
Before we get into her bio, Michael, you told me that I would love Bayley. Can you explain to me why you thought so?
I honestly think the answer to that question lies in the story of Bayley in NXT, because I think, for my money, there's an elite class of just squeaky clean good guys who their whole deal is just being a nice, polite good guy. I think being it's called a white meat babyface in wrestling terms, who's just a standard squeaky clean good person. And I feel like that is such a hard character to nail, because it's really hard to relate to. And if you don't do it just right, it can really turn you off. And I feel like Bayley is one of the few wrestlers I've ever seen who is able to naturally crack that code and wrestle in such a way that she can like make you believe that what you're seeing is real, make you feel for her, make you want to watch her overcome. Also, on top of all of that, her style in the ring, she's just like so unbelievably good at wrestling that it's just like, oh, she's got every single tool that makes a wrestler great. She's got them all. I think when she gets to the depths of a really tough match, I think is where I was like, I know you, and I know the emotion that like gets to you when you're watching wrestling. I was like, one of the people who does this better than almost anybody is Bayley. And so I really wanted to find some matches where that was on full display. And I'm happy to report, I think we found a few.
Okay, let's get into her bio. So Bayley is not her real name, gasp. Pamela Rose Martinez proudly hails from the Bay Area. She started out watching WWE and at an indie promo called Big Time Wrestling in Fremont. And according to their website, they have an event coming up called WrestleFest on May 11th, 2013. So run, don't walk, and get your tickets now. After watching wrestling at Big Time Wrestling, Pamela also started training there after turning 18 years old under Jason Styles. Pamela debuted in the ring in 2008, 4 months after starting training, and started wrestling under the name Davina Rose. Outside of Big Time Wrestling, you could have also spotted her at the NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Shine Wrestling, and Shimmer Women's Athletes. And another notable mentor of Davina Rose is Serena Deeb, who you may know from WWE, Shimmer, Shine, TNA, or currently AEW.
And I just wanted to point out for people that Shimmer is a all women's promotion that a lot of the women's wrestlers that we know in this sort of modern era all got their start being associated with Shimmer, because in the United States, that's one of the biggest places where women could wrestle. So Shimmer, very cool. So it's like, I do think we're going to see a lot of cross-pollination between women's wrestler getting their start in Shimmer.
And to that fact, I watched two of Davina Rose's Shimmer matches. The first one was Davina Rose versus Mercedes Martinez, Shimmer 41, October 1st, 2011. So this match was around 5 minutes. And here are some things that I noticed firsthand. Her ring gear looks pretty similar to what she was wearing in NXT. One thing that is in this match that I don't think I've seen before is, so Davina is wrestling against somebody named Mercedes Martinez. And she not only kind of pushes Bayley onto the bottom rope, but she steps on Davina's neck while she's pressed on the bottom rope, which is really, really horrifying. And what added to the horror is that there was a camera shot close up of Mercedes' foot on Bayley's neck, and that was really startling. Anyways,
so it's just rope, neck, foot, and it's just watching her be like,
yeah. And so Mercedes in this match was heel, but also it seemed like she was more popular with the crowd than Davina Rose.
I think from looking into the event, this would have been one of Davina's first outings for Shimmer, and so I think at that time Mercedes Martinez was a sort of local legend of the scene at that time. And then Davina Rose it's like, who's this young upstart coming through? So I do think it makes sense. And also, I want to say that Bayley is maybe 3 years into her wrestling journey. I honestly was seeing shades of who we would see later on down the line. With even 3 years of experience, I just think Bayley is so technically proficient at what she's doing that it was really incredible to watch even this, a match of her so early in her career, and you're like, yeah, the tools are all there. She's great.
She's a really wonderful wrestler, and she's already kind of as smooth smoother than you'd think that a newer wrestler would be. And she pulls this huge cradle reversal on a fisherman's brainbuster. Looked it up, and I thought it was just so impressive. And again, to your point, she's 3 years in and just pulling all of these really cool moves. It got me really excited to continue to dive in to Davina / Bayley. So Davina stays at Shimmer for a while until signing with NXT in early 2013. And apparently she debuted at NXT during a house show as a luchadora, which I really, really spent a long time, 5 minutes, Googling to see if I could find a picture or a video of her, because I think the commentary in one of the Shimmer matches that I watched called out that Davina was doing a little bit of lucha style, like jumping off of the ropes and stuff, as a nod to her Hispanic heritage. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, would love to see Davina in a mask. But I came up empty-handed.
So Samee put out the call, couldn't find a picture of luchadora in a mask. And so then I picked up the search and I did a little 5 minutes of my own digging. What I found was an interview where Bayley talked about, it was like from a Texas newspaper, where she was talking about her very first outing in NXT as luchadora. And so here's what she said. I don't know how many people know this, but my first match in NXT was a house show, and I actually wore a mask. It was NXT trainer Sarah Del Rey's mask. That's something she did at a previous show, and I was called La Luchadora. It was terrible, but it had dreads, and it was just this black and red mask. This was like January 2013, and I couldn't see, and I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh,
so
wow.
I looked up Sarah Del Rey, and I was able to find a picture of Sarah Del Rey wearing pretty much the exact mask that Bayley is talking about here. And so I'm going to flash it up on the screen now. So this is Sarah Del Rey wearing the mask, but I'm almost positive this is the exact mask that we're talking about. And so just imagine Bayley wearing this.
My biggest question really is, did she pull the dreads into a side ponytail?
That's pretty funny. So I guess for audio listeners, what we're seeing here that Sarah Del Rey is wearing is it kind of looks like a mask from the heavy metal band Slipknot, and it's got like long. It's not full problematic Rastafarian hat dreads, but it has like very small lead singer of Korn dreads, if that helps you. And then it's a black mask with red around the eyes, and then it's exposed so you can see her mouth and chin and stuff like that. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that there's not a picture or video of Bayley wearing this mask, because I just think I feel like Bayley, there were a ton of, as we'll get into later in Bayley's career, there were enough things that I was like, man, this is a tough start. And I really feel like had I seen La Luchadora, it would have been an extra tough start for me. So glad to leave this one a mystery, partially solved.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So as we mentioned in this, Davina is getting rebranded into a new wrestler now that she's joined NXT. And I guess I'll just give like the briefest of explainers for people who are brand new and might not know what NXT is. We cover it in a lot more depth in our Asuka episode a few episodes back. So if you want to dig in a lot deeper, we go into it there. So I will give you just the briefest little overview jumping forward. So in WWE, there are 3 shows. There is Raw, there is SmackDown, and then there is NXT. And NXT is more of a developmental system where people who are brought in from other places or maybe have less experience can come in and learn the ropes of the WWE system, how things work, learn what their character is, and get some on-air training before they get graduated up to one of these main roster shows. And so when Davina joins, she becomes the character Bayley. And so we'll be calling her Bayley for the rest of the show. So talking about Bayley, I think in a lot of ways, talking about like Bayley and the creation of NXT kind of go hand in hand because when Bayley debuts was pretty much a few years into NXT being an entity. And so from our Asuka episode, remember, NXT was born out of 2 things, a reality TV show called NXT that was just a scripted reality TV show, and then a genuine developmental territory called Florida Championship Wrestling. They merged the 2 and created the 3rd brand of NXT aimed specifically at developing new talent. So by the time NXT as an entity comes on the scene, that's right around the same time that Bayley comes on the scene. So she is one of the early pioneers of this like young up and coming NXT system. So I feel like as we grow with Bayley, we're growing with NXT, and it was really interesting to jump back in to be like, oh wow, in 2012 NXT was the Wild West. Just looking at some of those early events, it was so wild to be like, oh wow, this does not seem much different than somebody's Twitch stream, to be completely honest with you. But they're doing a wrestling show, and then every single month you can just see them making a massive upgrade, massive improvement. And then by the time we get to sort of the end of Bayley's run in NXT, they're at huge stadiums and they're playing to huge crowds with a huge rabid and loyal fan base. And so they covered a ton of ground in 3 years. So June 20th, 2012 is the official debut of NXT as most of us know it today. So NXT as an entity has just come on the scene. So they're brand new. And like we said in other episodes, like in our TNA episode, right? So the main issue they have getting off the ground is they're a brand new promotion. They don't have any champions. So they need to crown their champions. And so, Samee, I guess I just wanted to hit you with a good old-fashioned Wrestling Academy pop quiz.
Oh, you bitch.
If you had to guess, who do you think was the first ever NXT men's champion? And I'm going to give you a clue right now.
Okay.
You 100% know who this wrestler is. It's not some deep cut wrestler you've never heard of before.
Okay.
Some would say this is a Gibby.
Here's who I know came up from NXT.
Great.
Off the top of my head.
There you go. Let's start there.
Bayley.
It was not
Asuka.
Bayley. It was not Asuka. It would be a men's wrestler.
Right. Give me a multiple choice if you feel it in your heart, please.
Okay, I feel like it's gonna give it away. They're that popular that if I gave you a multiple choice, you would immediately know.
They're a popular person?
They're popular literally right now.
Were they at WrestleMania?
They were at WrestleMania 3 times.
Oh, okay. The Raw? No, it was Seth. Is it Sethy?
It is Seth freaking Rollins was the first ever NXT champion. So I think that's the thing.
Congrats, Seth.
I think that's the thing I wanted to point out for people who are maybe newer to NXT is NXT as an institution was revolutionary. So they took a lot of people who are this generation, like the top wrestlers right now, got their start in the independent scene. And then all those people were brought in from the independent scene to NXT to learn the WWE style. And then by introducing all of these people into this place, they more or less changed what mainstream wrestling became. So everybody who's super popular right now, chances are pretty high that they got their start in NXT.
Wow.
So we are talking Seth Rollins, Big E, Roman Reigns, Bray Wyatt, Asuka, Bayley, Sasha, Charlotte, Becky, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, everybody, like truly everybody.
Corbin.
Baron
King
Corbin,
Corbin was there.
Baron Corbin was there.
Very cool. Good job, NXT. Thank you.
This is going to be a very important entity in WWE wrestling at this time. And so we are literally starting ground floor day one. It is June 20th, 2012. And we are at the very, very, very beginning of NXT. And like I said, it really comes across not amateurish. It's just, it came across as very inspiring to me of, oh, wow, this is a huge $1 billion company. And they really didn't put a ton of resources into NXT, and it became so popular that you could see changes every single month. They're making a huge upgrade to the format, to the presentation, to the wrestlers they get, to the fan base they have. And by the time we get to 2015, they are in stadiums that are sold out with people screaming to see NXT. So, Seth Rollins, men's champion. We need to decide who the first ever women's champion was. And Samee, that person is someone I don't think you're as familiar with, so I'm not going to quiz you on it. But the first ever NXT women's champion was Paige. And I think Paige is she's a very interesting figure in women's wrestling around this time. So we are in the 2012 era. And I think that's an important time to note because in our Becky Lynch episode, we were talking about sort of the dark ages of women's wrestling in WWE, where things where things needed to evolve rapidly. And WWE as an institution always kind of claims that pioneering happened with Stephanie McMahon in 2015 and when she ushered in Charlotte Flair as the champion. But I think the person who came right before, Charlotte, the Four Horsewomen, the women's evolution, stuff like that, is this wrestler named Paige. So I wanted to get into Paige and what her deal was a little bit, because I think she's very important to the very beginning of this story. A lot of people talk about the beginning of the WWE's renaissance of the women's division as starting with Charlotte Flair, Four Horsewomen of NXT in 2015, but that's not the whole picture. And I would argue that the wrestler Paige was a key figure and a huge influence on where the women's revolution would go. So Paige, her family runs a wrestling promotion in the UK called World Association of Wrestling, and they created the World Association of Wrestling when Paige was around 2 years old. So that her family has been in the wrestling business for a very long, like she was born into it basically. And she makes her wrestling debut at age 13 and has been wrestling pretty much ever since. So Bayley, as we described, started wrestling at 18. So at that point, Paige had already had a 5-year head start on Bayley when she was first getting started. Yeah.
Sure, Paige.
So Paige, she makes it to the WWE in 2011 at age 19. And so they put her in the developmental territory of Florida Championship Wrestling. And that's right around the time that it gets rebranded as NXT. So she is literally on the ground floor of NXT being a thing. She's already been on the scene for about 6 years at this point. And so I think when everything gets rolling, Paige is already kind of a rock star. Her whole gimmick is, you saw her wrestle. Her whole gimmick is she's the anti-diva, basically. Yeah. So around this time in women's wrestling, women's wrestlers were not called women's wrestlers. They were called divas. It was the divas division. And so Paige, her character was a countercultural, she's an alt person, alt gothy. Sure. She's pale. Her hair is black.
She's pale.
She's got a ton of tattoos and, she's like a goth. She's like a goth person.
Yeah.
And that's branded as in stark opposition to most of the blonde, tan models that WWE would generally recruit. I think Paige, you can watch her whole story in the WWE Studios produced Fighting with My Family, starring her and Vince Vaughn. And the only reason I bring that up is because I went to an early screening of Fighting with My Family and Paige was there, and they did an open audience Q&A afterwards, and it was so insane to watch Paige have to take a bunch of unfiltered questions from weirdos and creeps on Hollywood Boulevard. It was so insane.
No.
She handled it great, and then I think Vince Vaughn really kind of came through and was the shield for,
thank goodness,
much like Seth Rollins. That day, Vince Vaughn was Paige's shield, and he protected her in that. It was just one of the most ill-advised things I've ever seen, where you're like, why did you get so many celebrities to come to this? This is crazy. It really gets into her whole history of growing up in a wrestling family, making the leap over to NXT. And so you really do get a lot more elements of her story, and you can see why stuff like her being goth was revolutionary at the time. Because at the time, that's just not what WWE was fully going for all the time. And so, not saying there were never goth wrestlers, there obviously were, but it was one of those things that was like yet another way that Paige stood out during this time period. Is like, she had a different look. She had a lot more experience than pretty much all the other wrestlers. So by the time she's coming in, she's already kind of a veteran of the game. And so when she debuts on NXT, on the newly branded NXT, she's sort of the face of the division. And so everybody who comes in has to go through her. And so I think the story I want to start with is going to start December 12th, 2012 on NXT TV, their weekly episodic programming, where we see Paige beat a new superstar who's debuting named Sasha Banks. More on her later. I think it was just, it pointed out to me that Paige was so popular that Sasha Banks, who's going to be factored very heavily into the story moving forward, but is also one of those legendary 4 horsewomen who revolutionized NXT's women's division as we know it. She had to go through Paige when she first started. It's like, that's how big a deal Paige was at the time. So Paige was the face of the women's division right before things swung pretty heavily in a changing direction. Sasha Banks debuts December 12th, 2012, gets beaten by the face of the NXT women's division, Paige. And we're going to jump ahead a few months to March 20th, 2013, NXT, where a new wrestler named Bayley debuts in the same fashion against the face of the women's division, Paige.
Okay, so this match was, I don't know, 3 minutes long. It was fun, though, because as you're mentioning, Paige is the anti-diva. She's goth or whatever, but she's also so over with the audience that for a little bit, Bayley, beloved natural babyface, came off as a heel, but by just the way that she was wrestling. So, a lot of submission moves, some like painful holds and stuff. But Paige's style really is like I don't care, I'm going to do what I want. And so she ends up still coming off as the bad boy. But at the end of this 3-minute match, Bayley submits to Paige's brutal submission, which looked to me like an enhanced Boston Crab. So I think she just drove her knee into the back of Bayley while she was wrenching her legs up. It was pretty mean.
So I also think, this match is 3 minutes. And the reason I wanted to start here, well, this is where Bayley officially comes into the NXT fold, but I do think it's an excellent snapshot of what was going on in NXT at the time and in the women's division at the time. So we're on NXT TV. This women's match is getting 3 minutes. And so that's pretty and the entire time they're being like, these divas are trying their best. They're doing their whole thing. And so it's just like a completely different vibe of what was going on in WWE at the time. And so I guess I was curious, you're used to the women's division, how it is now. How did it feel to just swoop back through into wrestling history and see a time when it like was kind of tough, I think, to be a women's wrestler?
Oh yeah, super tough. I mean, I appreciated that it wasn't a pillow fight match and that they were able to wrestle. It sucked that it was, I think, less than 3 minutes. But yeah, I mean, thanks for the tiny crack in the window for these gals to wrestle. Like, I don't...
And I agree with you. And I also think that the thing, I'm going to keep coming back to it, is even though Bayley, she's coming in, she doesn't really have a character. It's just sort of like, and we're throwing in Bayley. And she's just kind of like, all right, well, I'm here. I'm going to wrestle my best. I do think you can see the technical skill where when Bayley is wrestling Paige, it really feels like they're equals fighting. And I just think it really speaks to Bayley's natural athletic talent.
Speaking to Bayley not having a character yet by this match, I found this NXT promo school skit even from Bayley and Paige, and I kind of feel like the character that Paige was playing is going to be early Bayley's gimmick.
Are we going to show the footage? Because I've got a lot of opinions about this, to be honest with you.
Yes. Yeah,
when I watched it the first time, I was like, this is so fucking triggering. And let's watch it and I'll get into why.
I just want to say that I'm your biggest fan. Me, sweet. Yeah, sweet. Hug me. I'm sorry. Bayley, you love hugs. You're not even a wrestler. I'm not going to touch you. What? Freak. Freak?
All right, so
they
Samee, what did we just watch?
We watched two people who shouldn't be improvising improvise. And that was unfair of me to say that they shouldn't be improvising because they do now for their careers and they're really, really great at it now. But Bayley kept her elbows locked the whole time. And Paige was just, I don't know, talking loud in a way that I think that some people who aren't funny and are like too shy in front of people, they kind of default to that to say like, oh, talking loud is really funny, I guess. And so they just do that. Are you okay? You look like you're about to explode.
No, I'm fine.
What's up?
I'm fine. So I think this is important context. So what we saw was when we say NXT is a developmental promotion, what they do is they help train you. They help show you how to wrestle in the WWE style. You go to like acting classes where they help you work on your character, work on delivering promos, like literally every single aspect of how to be a professional wrestler for the WWE. You can learn how to do in NXT and the WWE Performance Center. So what we were watching was somebody filmed an acting exercise between Bayley and Paige. And I guess for me, it's just incredibly triggering because as somebody who's gone to a fair amount of acting and improv classes, I can't tell you, Samee, how many unbelievably cringy scenes and exercises and games and all kinds of stuff that I had to do in those classes. And the only reason any of us can be functional at all is you have to attack it with the confidence of no one's ever going to see this. So the fact that we like literally just watched two people be, probably their teacher somewhere is just like, yeah, try and fail, you guys. Like, this is never getting out. And then it does. And we just watched it. It's a betrayal. But actor to actor, we betrayed them,
Oh, shit. I even asked you if we should do it, and you said yes, kind of.
Yeah, because I'm a fucking freak, dude.
You are a freak.
So the clip we just watched is more or less, we just watched an exercise between two people in theater school. And I really think that probably the teacher was like, hey, Paige, wouldn't it be so funny if you just did the Bayley character? Just see how that feels. See what you think. And so it really feels like she's trying to do a parody of the Bayley character. And your mileage may vary. Far be it for me to give Bayley any sort of acting notes, but I feel like she was rejecting a lot of the offers, and that's just never going to move a scene forward. So, hey, far be it for me to give the the WWE Women's Champion acting notes, but just so she's sort of trying to find her character for about 4 months. So when she comes in her initial match in March, she's just sort of like, I'm Bayley and I'm going to wrestle. She doesn't have any sort of character to her at all. She just sort of gets brought in as somebody who fights Paige, loses pretty handily to Paige. And so by the time we get to June, there is an interview segment where they basically reintroduce the new Bayley. And Samee, I insisted you watch this interview Because when they bring her on, it's just sort of like, that locked arm thing that we were just talking about. They really bring her on. They're like, hey, this is our newest wrestler, Bayley. How do you feel? And it truly feels like they're interviewing a child who was not like a childlike person, like a literal 5-year-old kid. And she's got the energy of a little kid who just became Tom Hanks in the movie Big, right? Where it's like she's somehow in an adult body, even though she's a child. And so they're like, hey, how's it going? And she's just like, oh,
I like
hi.
robots.
It's just so like stilted and weird. And frankly, dude, she's coming across like the I Like Turtles kid. Do you remember that? She has the energy. It's just sort of like, cool. Do you like wrestling? And her being like, I guess everybody on the roster is so pretty. And you're like, what is any? It was a really tough watch as somebody who likes Bayley. And when I started watching NXT, she was already way more her established. She's like kind of awkward, kind of dorky, but at the end of the day, it's just sort of like going to give it her best try. This was not that. This was like 5 steps further away from that. And it was just an unfiltered, pure, cringy awkwardness that was like a really tough watch for me. But I feel like me and Samee had night and day reactions to this. How did you feel watching it, Samee?
I think knowing that Bayley got out of this character very fast helped me enjoy this, because I thought it was funny, but not in a I'm seeing the value in it sincerely kind of way, but it was really dumb. And it's like, all right, this is fine. But yeah, for some reason, it feels like there's almost a little bit of like, you're a little bit upset at how bad it was, which is totally fine. But for me, I loved how bad it was, because as we continue to go on this trail of Bayley, you can kind of still see the locked arms character just kind of loosen up a little bit, because this Bayley, happy to be around, excited to make new friends, likes robots. And as we continue, Bayley's still excited to be around, loves new friends, still likes robots. You know what I mean?
I guess, but to me, here's what's frustrating is it is one of those things. Just being an uncle, sometimes I've been introduced to like children, and when a child is just really shy and their parent is just insisting on being like, "Hey, Jeffrey wants to tell you something," and it's just like, okay, it seems like Jeffrey doesn't want to talk to me, and like, frankly, I don't want to talk to Jeffrey at all. So I just need us to. Like, the fact that you're keeping me in this interaction where this kid clearly doesn't want to talk, and I don't want to talk to him. And that's how this whole interview felt, where it's literally like, Bayley, do you like wrestling? And you're just like, dude, if you don't want to be here, character
she
or
does.
not, if your character doesn't want to be here,
the character does.
Get the fuck out, dude. There are plenty of other wrestlers who want this. And so just to have this like shy, like, I'm just being quirky. It just didn't work for me in a way.
That's
and
fair.
I think what was so frustrating is I like Bayley. I think Bayley's great. And so this is just a really frustrating move. And I was really honestly thinking about, okay, so here's why I was mad.
Okay.
Imagine this Bayley at WrestleMania 40.
Yeah, that would have sucked.
That would have sucked. And so I was just like, why are we doing that? Why are we starting in this deep of a hole for this character? We know it's not workable. Like, we gotta ratchet it up a little bit here.
Look, when you start at the bottom, you can grow a lot, and she did.
I guess. But to me, it was just in our Becky Lynch episode. Becky Lynch, her first character, she came out straight up as a river dancer. Yeah. And this really had those same vibes to me, where you're like, okay, so Bayley, you're like kind of awkward. So let's really just have you be awkward. And then it was like, well, all right, dude, too awkward. Doesn't work. You gotta figure something else out.
Here's what I'll say to that is Bayley was famously a huge fan of WWF, WWE, and that's what she watched growing up. She didn't want to debut like the women that she saw. So she didn't have mentors. She didn't have role models. There was one thing that she had that she could ratchet up into a character. So that's what it was. It was just an exaggerated awkwardness the only thing that she wanted to put on display.
I guess, dude. I'm just saying it was a rough start. And
yeah,
so
it was not great, but I loved it for some reason.
It was a tough watch. And I also think, I also a little bit feel like you liked it just to piss me off. So the fact that I was
no, because I
was like,
it.
I'm so fucking mad about this. And you're like, I loved it, dude. And I was like, oh, fuck off. No, you didn't.
No, I don't like things just to make you mad. Because I watched it today, like earlier, and I was still like giggling to myself. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe I see a little bit of myself reflected in that performance, knowing that as a nervous person, but also like liking to be, in front of a camera, sometimes the worst shit comes out, and that's what happened. And like I do know that there was one time I was part of a news segment in high school, and I was so excited about it, but I couldn't get my fucking shit together. So it was me and a group of my friends on the news, and they're like, okay, and what about you, Sammy Joy? And I went, it's okay. You can ask them stuff.
You just immediately passed it off.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Oh, that's all right. So maybe the reason you liked it is you were just like,
I saw myself.
She wanted to be there, and then as soon as the cameras were on, she was just like,
I like robots.
I've got robots on my trunks. And you're like, what are you talking about?
what the fuck? And kudos to the interviewer who really
had to just
rolled
stand
with
there and
Bayley.
take it. What a goddamn pro.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So in addition to this interview that left a lot to be desired for some, was perfect for others. So later, she is actually in a qualifying match for, so as we said, NXT is just getting started. They don't have a women's championship yet. So they're going to hold a tournament to crown their very first women's champion. And so in this qualifying match for the tournament, we have Bayley versus Alicia Fox. Sammy, how'd you find this match?
We strap in for another 3-minute match. I did feel excited about it still. They still wrestled pretty well, I think. One of the commentators early on repeated themselves and said, the wide-eyed innocence of Bayley, which is exactly everything we needed to know about Bayley, whether we watched the promo or not. Bayley starts out like reaching out her hand to shake Alicia Fox's hand because Alicia Fox was returning from WWE to do this NXT qualifying match. Yeah. So, Bayley's the super fan. That's kind of what she's being painted as. She's just excited to be around. She loves wrestling. She loves wrestlers. So she reaches out her hand to Alicia Fox.
But then it was all a trap because as soon as Alicia Fox goes to shake her hand, Bayley pulls her in for a hug. Because that's the other thing about the new Bayley character is she just loves giving hugs. Sammy, I guess this is the perfect, I think, time to ask you this question. How do you feel about people who self-identify as like huggers?
I'm a hugger.
I'm a hugger, give me that. Do you feel like it adds a little bit of tenderness that the world needs, or do you feel like they're boundary crossing creeps? Weigh in.
I think that both are true. I think you can absolutely identify as a hugger, but you need to warn people of that, and then you also have to be 100% respecting of someone who doesn't like to be touched at all. And I am not a hugger. I love receiving hugs when I want them. So there are some people who I have, upset because they'll be like, well, I'm a hugger. And then I'll say, I'm not. And there's got to be mutual respect and consent.
I agree. And so that's what I mean, where I'm like, this is just we're starting Bayley off rough, dude. Like we already saw this promo, which we don't need to get into anymore, but it's like, we already thought this promo was like left a lot to be desired. And now her whole deal is she gives unsolicited hugs. Like, give me a break. Like,
it's a little
really
bit too much.
Tying Bayley's hand behind her back. And so I think the reason why I bring it up so much
or behind someone else's back.
Right. She ties her hands together. Yeah, dude, you get it. Hugs. The reason why it frustrates me so much is there really is a moment in this match where, I mean, this is classic wrestling good guy stuff, right? Where there's a moment where Bayley gets really fired up and then goes on this amazing sequence where she's just this unbelievable wrestler, and the technical skill is just so above and beyond what was happening in that match up until then that you're just like, who is this virtuoso? Like, this is incredible. Like, everything about what is going on here is not ideal, not great, not enough time. The presentation is weird, but then you just get the raw skill of what Bayley can do, and it makes you be like, well, I want to see her keep wrestling because this was fucking awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it is even kind of a little bit annoying that what triggers Bayley to kick open a can of whoop ass is that Alicia Fox pulls off Bayley's headband, and then her reaction is like, no! And then it's like, oh, okay. So she wasn't taking the match seriously until she lost her headband. Like, it's like, why are these boundaries set? Why can't you just wrestle the whole time like this? So yeah, I understand.
It set her up to be just an overtly comedy character, but I think you can see from the technical skill that I think she had more to offer than that. And so it really, to me, just felt like such a frustrating misstep for the character that, it's going to take her some time to work her way out. So Bayley ends up losing the qualifying match, so she does not advance in the tournament. So when we get to the end of this tournament for the NXT women's title, it is going to be Paige versus Emma. And Paige, as we said, ends up becoming the first NXT women's champion. And she does this at the age of 21.
Oh, God.
So by comparison, Samee, what were you doing at age 21 while...
I'm so happy you asked.
Yeah, around the time Paige is becoming NXT women's champion, what were you up to?
I was drinking lukewarm PBRs that I was storing in a backpack of mine. I didn't go to college, but I was a townie for Colorado College, which is downtown Colorado Springs. And I also worked at a Radio Shack at the time in the mall that I went to as a child and teenager. And I was late to Black Friday one year because I drank too much and I threw up all over my clawfoot tub, which was in my 100% carpeted bathroom. So, damn. Could I have been NXT's women's champion while I was 21? Yeah, absolutely not. What were you doing at 21?
Vulnerable theater exercises.
And we have a clip, right? Meow.
No, don't show it, please.
I'm a hugger.
All that to say, could I have been NXT's women's champion? Hell no, dude.
Paige deserves it.
I was getting all over Bayley's case for being a pretty bad actor, being a pretty bad actor. But the reason I know and can criticize is because at 21, I was an even worse actor. An even worse actor with no athletic upside. So I was really just sort of a lost cause for about 8 years. So So Paige becomes the very first NXT women's champion, July 24th, 2013. So we're going to move on to September 25th, 2013. There is an NXT TV taping where the reason I wanted to pop it in is just because we've got one of the very first encounters of Sasha Banks and Bayley. So these two are going to kick off an amazing rivalry, and this is sort of their first encounter with one another. So I just thought it was worth noting here. But Samee, it seems like you found something else noteworthy in this episode.
So we are served a card, a photo, a promo of the man in charge, Triple H. Now, because I wasn't tuned into wrestling until recently, I have not gone through the stages of hair of Triple H. And so I was so delighted to see that on this promo card, we have buzz cut Triple H. He keeps the beard. He has the thing coming up and under the ear or around the ear. Sideburns, that's what you call them. And he has buzz cut hair, like high and tight hair. It's not even just a buzz. There's like, I don't know, maybe 1.5 inches of hair on there. And I don't know what it is, but seeing Triple H this way really took my breath away.
I'll be honest with you, Samee.
Yeah.
You seemed and continue to seem flustered by Buzzcut Triple H. What's going on here?
Twitter pated. I don't know. Maybe it's like because we've seen so many iterations of him, and we've seen. Unfortunately, my least favorite is his mutton chops, and right now he's bald with the beard. And we're all familiar with long hair Triple H, but this buzz cut, like I don't know. I really don't know.
It tapped into something primal within you.
Or something. I mean, I had an audible reaction and immediately took a screenshot, even though I know that you can't take screenshots when you're watching on your damn laptop.
Yeah, Chrome was like, "This is fucking sick. You can't don't record this, you weirdo."
Chrome waggled its finger at me, and then I snapped back into reality. But yeah, Paul Levesque with a buzz cut. I dig it.
So while Samee was digging that, I was digging the match between Sasha Banks and Bayley. And I think we're about 4 months into Bayley's rebranded character. So we're about 8 months into Bayley being an NXT wrestler. Mm-hmm. And I think when she's coming in, you can hear the crowd chanting with her during her entrance. So it's like, it really does feel like what she's been doing has been connecting with the crowd. And so maybe it didn't necessarily work for me because I'm some kind of irony-laden sociopath. And so just somebody being awkward and genuine is just triggers something
too much
false.
For you.
Yeah, something weird is happening. This person's being vulnerable.
I hate that.
Yeah, so her vulnerability seems to be really connecting with the crowd. And so she runs into Sasha Banks. She's been in NXT a little bit longer than Bayley. Mm-hmm. So she goes on to like beat again, we're still in the dark ages of women's wrestling. So another really quick match. Sasha Banks is able to pick up the victory over Bayley. The crowd is chanting no in the style of the Daniel Bryan yes movement. When he got angry, it would be no. And so the crowd was chanting no, no, because they were angry that Bayley lost. And so while this happens, Sasha Banks' mentor, Summer Rae, gives Sasha the nickname that will become her new character, basically, where she dubs Sasha Banks the boss. And so this is now where Sasha Banks finds the character that she will then grow into. So we've got the beginning of Bayley, and then this match is also the beginning of Sasha Banks as the legit boss as we know her. And Samee, how'd you find this match?
It was a 4-minute run. William Regal was as captivated with Renee Young as I am with Buzzcut Triple H, and it was to the point where
he was talking recklessly on that mic, dude.
Bro, he was like, "Hello, Renee." It's like, dude, you said hi like 2 minutes ago. You're gonna say hi again. What's your problem?
Yeah, bro, you're at work right now, and we can hear you at work. We can hear what you're doing.
You're literally leaning into your microphone to talk to Renee Young. Like, chill.
Yeah, call the match. Sasha Banks is becoming the legit boss. You're seeing history, but no, you're too busy trying to flirt with Renee.
I know, it was wild, but it was cool to see Sasha and Bayley, put up their dukes. So let's talk a little bit about the boss, Sasha Banks, right here. So Mercedes Caster Varnado is her real name, and she is going by Mercedes Monet currently at AEW. She also grew up watching wrestling, but specifically, her family got her New Japan Pro Wrestling tapes, which I thought was really interesting. She started wrestling in 2010 at a promotion called Chaotic, which I'm not sure we've talked about yet, but they are a Massachusetts-based training facility and promotion. She debuts as Mercedes KV, and in stark contrast to Bayley's loss-heavy early career, Mercedes wins the Chaotic Wrestling Women's Championship in an I Quit match against Alexis and holds it for 378 days. And she only vacated it because she was going over to WWE. So I watched the I Quit match with Alexis, aka Alicia Edwards. It was in 2011. So at the same time that Davina Rose was getting her neck stepped on, Mercedes KV was having this quite long, like 3 times longer I Quit match with Alexis in Illinois. So because it was an I Quit match, there's a lot more brutality and savagery. And I'm going to tell you this. I don't know if you watched it yet, but here's what I'm going to say to maybe tempt you into watching it, is that in the final moments, Mercedes wins the match using an XLR cable.
Okay. As someone who works in audio, I'm intrigued. I need to know more.
You must. So, yeah, any audio dorks, watch that match between Mercedes KV and Alexis from 2011.
And I think that's really interesting, Sammy, that you point out that there is really I do think there is such a stark contrast between Bayley and Sasha Banks, even in terms of their wrestling upbringing, right? Where it does feel like from Davina Rose to Bayley, she's just like a really lovable, technically skilled wrestler who seems to lose a lot and really had to struggle and to fight to earn her spot. Whereas Sasha Banks is a lot more of a cool, calm, collected character who's basically booked to more or less just roll right in and take the fuck over. And that's exactly what happens when she comes into NXT too, where it's like, oh yeah, she had her initial losing effort to Paige, but that's because Paige was literally the face of the women's division when she walked in. And so, yeah, it is just now we're seeing Sasha Banks become this, like, literally becoming the boss by beating the crap out of Bayley once again here in NXT. And I guess this is what I wanted to ask you. You have never been fully formally introduced to Sasha Banks as a character. I feel like she's just somebody you've heard about a little bit. And I mean, in our Hell in the Cell episode, we covered like one match, but I feel like this rivalry that we're talking about here really felt like it was a lot more of a formal introduction to Sasha Banks and what her deal was. So I guess I was just curious, how did you find Sasha Banks through this whole journey?
Oh, Sasha Banks, was booked to dominate, right? Obviously. Like, she rules. She fucking rules. And she's just so, like, quick and brutal and
effortlessly cool.
Yeah, just so, like, she has the bad boy charisma that I know I would love to have, but I don't. Sorry. But yeah, she's so cool. She's so cool. And I really do want to dig in a lot more to Sasha Banks and / Mercedes Moné, just so that we can make sure that everybody else or all of our listeners are looking into Sasha Banks / Mercedes Moné too, because she rules. She rules.
And I do feel like she becomes the perfect villain in this Bayley story because she almost feels like the exact opposite of Bayley in so many ways.
100% opposite.
Just as technically skilled and is just like cool and confident, whereas Bayley it has to struggle and seems to lose a lot. You know what I mean? And so it is just sort of the perfect rivalry of the beginning of their career, and the fact that they got to help kickstart the other's career is just incredibly beautiful. So,
100.
As we said, their first encounter, Sasha Banks wins, is declared the legit boss, and that's going to be the character she runs with for the foreseeable future. And we move things right along to February 27th, 2014. And the only reason I bring that up is it is the very first NXT branded special event. So in the WWE, every month they have pay-per-view events, premium live events. And that's like just the big milestone that every single week of weekly program is leading up to is to these big events. So NXT 2014 gets their very first one. It's called NXT Arrival, where we have Paige, the women's champion, fight Emma. And then we're going to zoom ahead from February all the way till April 7th. So things are kind of going. So the reason I keep bringing up Paige, right, is she's been the face of the women's division this entire time. And things are going as normal, where it's like Paige is dominant. Paige is popular. Nobody can stop Paige. And then this is where things change. April 7th, 2014 is Monday Night Raw. It is the Raw after WrestleMania 30. NXT superstar Paige makes a shocking debut on Monday Night Raw where she defeats the current Divas champion, AJ Lee, and becomes a double champion. She's both the Divas champion, the NXT Women's Champion, holding those belts simultaneously. So April 24th on NXT TV, the acting commissioner, JBL, who, Samee, you may remember from our WrestleMania 21 episode, he fought John Cena. He was also in the Acolytes. Long history career, but he's sort of an on-air authority figure in NXT at this current stage of time in 2014. He decides that he is going that Paige is now on the main roster, so she can't do both. And so he makes her relinquish her NXT women's title, and then Paige moves up to the main roster where she is just the Divas champion. And so this is why I wanted to bring this up. This is why it's important. The face of the women's division is gone. There needs like a new, there's like now a power vacuum, and the new face of the NXT women's division is right for the taking. And so that's exactly what they decide to do. They're going to hold a new tournament to decide the second ever NXT women's champion. Things kick off May 1st, where we have 2 qualifying matches for the tournament. So we have Sasha Banks versus Bayley yet again. So it's like we've already had this thing. This is where Sasha Banks, she's defeated Bayley already, so she's already got a little bit of momentum. These two run it back one more time, but the winner this time, if you win, you get to advance in this tournament. So Bayley cuts a promo right before this match, and I really feel like they've dialed the character in tremendously. So it's like she's still awkward, but she's less I like turtles awkward now, and is more just sort of a socially awkward WWE superfan. And so she's referencing a lot of WWE history, things she hopes to do, things she wants to do. And it is just a lot more relatable to me personally as a person. And I think she was a lot more in line with the Bayley that I remember when I was getting into NXT around this period of time. And then, yeah, Sasha Banks, she's really leaning into this boss character. So she's got like the glasses, she's got the jacket, you know, she's got the swag that she's sort of known for. They run it back again, and Sasha Banks is able to beat Bayley for the second time, meaning Sasha Banks advances one step further in the tournament.
What I loved about Bayley's less awkward, still dorky promo is that she like brings her fists up, and like I think she's trying to be threatening, but she holds them up so awkwardly, and she's like, these are my guns. It's like, Bayley, what are you doing, dog? So this match was 4 minutes long, basically. And here's a side note. I feel like if they let the women wrestle longer than 4 minutes at a time, we wouldn't have to run it back so often. Glad that they figured that out. The second thing is that at this point, after watching all of these matches, you can kind of see the pattern in a Bayley match where in the beginning and half of the middle, she's getting the fucking shit kicked out of her. Then something turns, and then we see all of her technical ability. We see all of her incredible moves, her double handle axe thing that she does.
Double axe handle.
There you go. Double axe handle. She's throwing her Bayley to belly. She's suplexing all over the place. And then her opponent kicks her, catches her off guard, and pins her. So this match did not stray from that pattern, but I think that it still is a great match, even though it's only 4 minutes long.
I got you. And I do think a pattern is starting to emerge with the Bayley character where she could just never seem to rise to the occasion, and she can never quite get those victories when she needs them the most. And so she's a beloved character, but she loses constantly and is getting passed by all these people. And so I feel like that really that really endears people to Bayley even more. So as we said, Bayley unfortunately fails to advance. And then in the same episode of NXT, we have another qualifying match between Natalya versus a wrestler named Layla. And so Natalya is able to win. And in fact, Natalya goes on to win the majority of this tournament until we get to May 29th, 2014, NXT TakeOver, which is the first ever NXT TakeOver event ever. So now every single big event for NXT is labeled TakeOver. So this is the first time they ever did that. So we're May 29th, 2014, and this is when they first start branding their premium live events takeovers. And I thought that was really cool. So in the main event, to decide who will win the NXT Women's Championship, the winner of the tournament, the match is between Charlotte Flair with her father, Ric Flair, in her corner. Wow. And then we have Natalya Neidhart with Bret Hart in her corner. And then Bret Hart was in a tag team in a faction, the Hart Foundation, with Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Natalya's father. So we have the children of wrestling legends, wrestling families, wrestling in the main event to obsessively see who's going to become the face of the women's division. And I guess what I want to ask you here, Samee, is how do you feel about nepotism in wrestling? You know, we have a huge problem with nepo babies in Hollywood, but how do you feel about them in wrestling?
Wrestling hurts a lot and is hard, and you just have to earn it. You have to earn it to be a good wrestler, and it doesn't matter. I mean, sure, it's a little unfair that, you know, some people grow up in a training facility. Natalya, Paige, the bloodline or whatever.
I have the same problem when I see celebrities with no wrestling training come into a storyline. You know, I've seen musicians, I've seen sports athletes, I've seen musicians, I've seen athletes, I've seen actors come in and really just not understand the subtleties of the acting, have no physical prowess, and then we're meant to believe that they can beat these highly trained athletes who we watch week to week. And so it is really frustrating. And so I think what you're saying, and I agree with you, is that being a nepotism baby in wrestling can probably open a ton of doors for you. But if you suck at wrestling, you're probably not going to make it too far. So So it's like, yes, there's a huge amount of prestige on these two wrestlers, Charlotte and Natalya, because of the pedigree that they come from. But at the end of the day, we say it all the time, Charlotte Flair is just an amazing wrestler.
She fucking kicks ass.
And is no exception. Charlotte Flair becomes the second ever NXT Women's Champion. And I believe that most people, this is where they would say this is where the women's revolution starts to percolate, because this is the match that really gets on a lot of people's radar of being like, wait, children of two kind of wrestling legends really started to make some noise here. And then I think Charlotte Flair is sort of a corporate champion that they can really start to get behind. And this is where the gears really start turning. But I only wanted to bring up Paige because I really feel like Paige is the one who got the ball rolling. And that's that's not taking any credit away from Charlotte and what she does. But I don't know. I just feel like a lot of times Paige gets left out, and I just wanted to get her brought up.
Look, that's canon for Wrestling Academy. Paige is canon for Wrestling Academy.
Charlotte, she's got the title. Now she's got to start defending it, right? She's got to start cementing her legacy as the face of the women's division. So we go to an event called NXT TakeOver Fatal 4-Way, September 11th, 2014, where Charlotte fights Bayley.
Hey, Bayley.
And this is where Bayley comes out, and she's got a new theme song, and she's got a new thing that she starts doing for big events around this time is much how Macho Man used to have like tassels and stuff like that. Bayley makes like a tassel cape that she comes running out in, and it's just so like running around. And it has like the new theme song, and then she's got these inflatable guys that are out in front of car dealerships, and they're called wacky waving inflatable tube men, I guess. And so like they're really leaning into the upbeat, positive vibes for Bayley. And then, you know, Charlotte Flair comes out to Ric Flair's theme song and then just continues to put on a fucking dominant display. Charlotte wins, Charlotte retains. We continue on to December 11th, 2014, NXT TakeOver R Evolution, where Charlotte fights Sasha Banks, beats her as well. And so things are really starting to build and percolate. And by the time we get to February 11th, 2015, we are at NXT TakeOver Rival, where we have a fatal 4-way match for the NXT Women's Championship between champion Charlotte, Sasha Banks, Bayley, and Becky Lynch.
Hey.
And this match is significant because these 4 women are branded the 4 horsewomen of NXT, which we cover in a lot more detail in our Becky Lynch episode. So if you want to know more, check that out. But these are these are the 4 pillars that people look to of the NXT women's division around this time. And I just, before we get into this match, Samee, just a fun fact on commentary. One of the commentators is Jason Albert, who you may remember from our 1999 discussion when we talked about a wrestler named Prince Albert, who would then become rebranded as Lord Tensai.
Oh,
Samee,
my goodness.
How did it feel to have Lord Tensai on commentary?
One, please flash a picture of Lord Tensai now. Wait, so how do I feel knowing that this man is present? I feel safe, and I feel like nothing can hurt me ever again.
Yeah, we're in safe hands now that Lord Tensai is on the case.
Yeah, I also, coming from the commentary desk, heard some of the commentators throw out some slanderous words against Becky, which is really interesting because obviously she's not the man yet. But it was like, they were like, Becky, she's gonna like lie, cheat, and steal. It's like they almost gave her like an Eddie Guerrero, like she's a sleazebag type of personality, which is very interesting.
I feel like at that stage of time, Becky Lynch was still struggling to find her character and hadn't quite established herself in the way that Charlotte had, and the way that Bayley and Sasha Banks are getting to start to flesh out their characters. I think Becky Lynch was definitely still searching around for what her character was going to be. But I felt like this match was incredible. Obviously it's 4 future legends all in the ring together. And so this match is just great pace, and it really felt like it really had that frantic energy that you would expect a real fight to have, where it's like, whoever wins first gets the championship. And they're all wrestling at this pace where they want that title so bad. And so this match ruled. They were going at breakneck speed pretty much the whole time. And since there were 4 opponents, they could really keep that momentum going pretty much as they wanted to.
Talking about the ferocity that they were fighting with, I do want to mention this one spot that was so comical, unintentionally comical to me. So it's Sasha Banks, and she gets Charlotte and Becky somehow stretched across the corner, like around the turnbuckle. So Charlotte's stretched across, and then Becky's stretched across the ropes. And then Sasha jumps up and drives her knees through the 2 wrestlers. And it was much like putting like a chainsaw through butter. She just went, ring! And she followed this up with this the most comical near fall sequence I've ever seen. So she goes over, she tries to pin Charlotte. Charlotte kicks out. Sasha screams, goes over, pins Becky. Becky kicks out at 2. Sasha screams again, and she goes back over to Charlotte. Charlotte kicks out, and Sasha screams a lot more. And I know that it was supposed to convey her frustration, but I watched it several times, and every time I had a real giggle about it.
It was very funny. It's just her being like, yeah. Just it goes on a beat longer than you'd expect. But and here's the thing. Sasha Banks, very funny in this moment, but she is fucking brutalizing people this entire match. Yeah. There's this incredible sequence where Sasha leaps out of the ring and does like a crossbody and just totally hits Becky and Bayley and just takes them both out. And then Charlotte stands up, saw that all this happens, and immediately leaps out of the ring, like as if to be like, not to be outdone, immediately leaps out and crossbodies all 3 of them. And I just thought that
100%.
That was fucking awesome.
Charlotte's a real beast, dude. When Sasha jumps out initially, there's this moment where Becky's really holding on to her like a real Bayley hug. And I thought that was really nice. And then once Charlotte comes out, nobody's holding her tenderly.
No, well, she's a champion.
Yeah, you're right.
And so, okay, so like after all that stuff is happening, the action spills back into the ring, and Bayley manages to hit Charlotte with her finisher off the top rope. And so you're just like, oh, sick. Bayley's about to lock it in. And then, like we said, Bayley, she gets so close. Then Sasha Banks runs in, scoops Bayley off, like throws Bayley out of the ring, and then goes in to get the pin for herself. And everyone's like, no! But then Charlotte is able to kick out. But then Sasha Banks locks in her finisher and just has this, again, they're really playing that frantic energy because like Sasha has her finisher locked in. So it's like a submission move. So if Charlotte taps out, she loses. And so she locks it in as immediately looking all around the ring like, okay, where's everybody? Who's coming at me?
Yeah.
What's going to happen? And there's this sort of race against time about being like, will Charlotte tap before the action starts to spill in the ring? And so you just got like Sasha kind of almost being like, come on, get to it. And then you got Charlotte like really trying to wriggle and fight her way out of it. And you can just see Sasha Banks getting so fucking pissed off about this. And then at one point, Becky hops up on the turnbuckle. And then you see Sasha be like, nope, releases the hold, runs up, kicks Becky, and she falls right off the turnbuckle, runs right back over and immediately locks in the submission hold again. She's wrenching it. Charlotte is like trying her best to get out of it. She's been in this hold for so long. She tries to fight the good fight, almost makes it to the ropes, but right at the last second, right when she's reaching, Sasha Banks rolls her back up, gets the 1, 2, 3, and Sasha Banks becomes the third ever NXT Women's Champion.
I did not see that coming at all. I thought that was such a fun match. It highlighted each person had their own moment to shine. Huge for Sasha Banks.
So it's February, right? So February, Sasha Banks holds on to the title until something happens. July 13th, 2015, on an episode of Monday Night Raw. If you'll recall from our Becky Lynch episode, this is the exact episode where Stephanie McMahon gets on the microphone and verbally states that they're about to have a women's revolution. And that's when she calls up Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, all get brought up from NXT to the main roster.
Oh, what about Bayley?
Bayley's still back down in NXT.
Gosh.
And so,
too busy hugging everyone.
Too busy hugging everybody. Just for whatever reason, she was not brought up to be the official face of the women's revolution just yet. And so around this time, so that's July. So in August, so like we said with Paige, right? When you get brought up and you're holding the championship, something needs to be done about it. So in August 12th, 2015, there's a number 1 contenders match for the NXT Women's Championship between Bayley and Becky Lynch. Bayley wins. So August 22nd, 2015, we move into NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. Sasha Banks versus Bayley for the NXT Women's Championship.
Yeah.
Samee, how did you feel about this match?
So let's talk about this match. Bayley launches out of the gates after a brief stare down between her and Sasha. Bayley is ready to win that championship title. That pattern that I mentioned earlier, where Bayley got the snot beat out of her for the beginning and middle of a match and then came back, that's not the case here. So Bayley springboard elbow drops Sasha after hanging her upside down in the corner. One thing that came to light during this that I didn't know before, or maybe it didn't sink in yet, is that you cannot lose a championship by countout. So Sasha took advantage of this and kind of stayed out of the ring when she realized that Bayley was on kind of a tear in the beginning.
Yeah. So, this is a good thing to bring up here. So in the WWE, there's a thing called the champion's advantage. So if you're in a championship match, the title cannot change hands via a countout or a disqualification. So there are technically 2 ways to lose in a championship match and still retain your title. So sometimes bad guys will utilize that, much like in this match. Sasha Banks is like, oh, I can't be counted out. So it actually puts the onus on Bayley to physically get me back into the ring, and she's going to have to expend more energy, and she's going to be a little bit off her game because I've got the advantage being the champion.
How dastardly of Sasha.
Dastardly.
Dastardly. And so to retaliate, Bayley gets in some pretty savage baseball slides into Sasha's face. Eventually, Sasha starts talking trash to Bayley, calling her a loser. And to interrupt Sasha or to stop her from talking, Bayley just kicks her face clean off. So after this, Bayley gets a little bit of the upper hand, and Sasha, in retaliation to that, starts playing dirty and exposes Bayley's freshly healed broken hand, and she slams it on the stairs. And to go a step further, she wedges Bayley's hand in between the stairs and the ring, and then kicks the stairs into her hand, which made me scream aloud for sure. Sasha also does this crazy thing where she jumps over the ref who was standing at the edge of the ring. She jumps over the ref and into Bayley, who was outside of the ring. So it kind of looked like Sasha leapfrogged the referee, but she didn't touch the referee at all. This match was ridiculous.
And I also just feel like, we've talked about this before, but and we've covered these two having wars with each other before. Mm-hmm. And I really just think the wrestling chemistry between these two is so good. It's so incredible. And their characters are so diametrically opposed that it really just heightens everything that they're doing, where it's like, not only are they both amazing in the ring, as you can see, but the characters also just work with each other. And Bayley has this 2-year history of getting so goddamn close to that title and just always coming up short. I mean, when we talked about that Fatal 4-Way match, Bayley was about to win it, and who snatched it from her? Sasha Banks, her very first shot at the inaugural women's title. Who snatched that opportunity from her? Sasha. So Sasha has been like cutting Bayley down every step of the way. And so you could really just feel the emotion that Bayley has, where it's like she needs to win this. But here's the thing. Sasha Banks is fucking incredible. So it's like, you really picked the boss, like she's fighting the boss. So it is one of those things, like, Bayley needs this, but that doesn't necessarily mean she's going to get it, because Sasha's so good.
So it's she's really just undeniable. Bayley starts gaining steam, and we see her signature double axe handles, which kind of reminds me of Cena's 5 moves of doom. So once we see the double axe handles, we know that she's coming out for business, and she starts creaming Sasha until Sasha gets her in a bank statement. And seeing Bayley's struggle here made me really emotional. I think it was just one of those storytelling moments where you could see the struggle and the need to win, and the win just out of reach of Bayley's hands. So obviously I'm going to be crying here.
That's why I think Bayley's such a good, relatable good guy. And I think that's why, when you asked me, like, why did I think you would enjoy Bayley so much? And it's literally because this is what Bayley's the best at. Like, she, more than anyone, can just wear this on her face, and you can see just the raw emotion, the raw determination. Like, she's got this like incredible frown. Her hair is super messed up, and she's just there, and you can tell she's so frustrated. But she's like, I gotta keep going. What other choice do I have? And that's just pure good guy, babyface stuff. Like, that's what 100%. You want. When we've talked about this before, the concept is a white meat babyface. That's what it's called. And that just is the John Cena episode. It's just a squeaky clean good guy who doesn't cheat, doesn't break the rules. They just want to win. I don't think John Cena's really good at it, honestly. No. And I mean, it's like, we don't have to relitigate our John Cena episode here, but it's like,
shall we?
But I honestly think when you're looking for somebody who's trying to give you the emotion that John Cena is supposed to give you, look at what Bayley does. Like, that's an undeniably good at her job babyface, because she makes you believe, she makes you want, she makes you care. Whereas I think with John Cena, for some people he did, and for others he didn't, and he really turned people off. And so I think Bayley is kind of a pretty undeniable babyface, and that's really why I wanted you to check her out more, because of literally this match right here. You saying that, her determination, her will to win made you tear up, made me tear up, made us all tear up. It's like That's why I wanted you to check out Bayley, because Bayley is this good.
It was so good. And she continued to reach and try to drag towards the ropes.
And just as a storyline beat, Bayley had previously broken her hand. So Sasha is specifically targeting her injured, recovering broken hand, which is
just so rude.
So fucked up.
It's like, so rude.
It's so rude.
Well, thankfully, Bayley is able to break the submission and she gets Sasha into a bank statement. But Sasha, unfortunately, gets her leg onto the bottom rope, which was just so devastating.
That I feel like that beat was so perfect, where it's like you could just see Bayley like scrambling and she's like trying, and Sasha's like just eluding her, and she's trying to roll her up. Her hair's a mess. She's like so fucking over it at this point. She just needs this win. She goes for it, and then the move that really seems to elicit a reaction from you, Samee, Sasha Banks just puts her foot on the rope, breaks the count, doesn't lose. And so you could just see Bayley with this like, what do I have to do to win? Like, it's just so, you could just see it. She's so frustrated, but she's got to keep going.
Yeah, and the heartbreak continues. So there's a sequence where Sasha, they're both on the ropes, and Sasha is able to push Bayley off of her from the top rope. So Bayley kind of suplexes herself, and she just like nails her own head, and so they end up back in the corner on the top ropes again. So, and Bayley flips Sasha off the top with her legs around her head, which is a hurricanrana, right? But it was reverse.
So a reverse Rana.
So Bayley does a reverse Rana and flips Sasha off the top ropes. She tightens her ponytail. She Bayley to belly Sasha. And guess what, Michael?
What?
We have a new NXT Women's Champion.
That was one of those just endorphin rushes, just pure serotonin of you being like, oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt. How did you feel?
I felt the same. I think, that scream that I was letting out at WrestleMania when Samee won, pretty much the same scream that this match elicited. So it was only 20 minutes long, but boy, oh boy, did these two get into it. Highly, highly recommend checking this match out. And old NXT is available on Peacock.
I want to just put this in a little bit of historical context, Samee. So it's, right, we started at the very beginning of NXT when it was just a live stream. And then women's matches, 3 minutes long. They weren't even called, it wasn't even the women's division. They were called divas. And so here we are at a 20-minute barn burner in like a state, in a stadium, rabid fans, and they're putting on this 20-minute match for the NXT Women's Championship. So
I love that.
Up until this point, I think historically, this match is considered one of the greatest women's matches, one of the greatest American WWE women's matches of all time. And I was wondering, because you didn't necessarily have any of that baggage on this match going into it.
Mm-mm.
But when I say that to you, how does that strike you? Does that feel right? Or does it feel like just another match?
Look, it seems like I cry a lot, but this match, just like it's the physical storytelling of this match is so beautiful. Like, it's just so thick and rich, like a good stew. And I absolutely believe that up until that point, this was the greatest match. Like, absolutely. We haven't really covered anything during this time that has been so effective.
And I think it also answered your demand where you're like, hey, if you let women's matches cook a little bit more, you give them a little bit more time, I think you'll get some pretty good results. And here we have that proof.
Yeah. Like four times longer than what they've been allowed to do. And I get to crying. So, yeah. I mean, obviously, this is not falling upon deaf ears, but it's, I don't know, I'm a few years late. Everybody's doing just fine.
So, Bayley finally is able to become the NXT Women's Championship. Like, she's finally able to get the big win that she's been looking for. And normally the way this goes in NXT, the pattern is when you lose the title, that generally means you're going to get called up. And I mean, we've already had Stephanie McMahon call Sasha Banks up to the main roster. So everybody's like, great, Sasha Banks, she's going to disappear into the sunset, and it's time to start her career up on the main roster. Except that's not what happens. Sasha Banks is not ready to give up this title yet. So these two run it back one last time, October 7th, 2015 at NXT TakeOver Respect, where they have a 30-minute Iron Man match for the NXT Women's Championship match. And so, Samee, you were saying you've never seen an Iron Man match before. So what do you think it is? Or what did you learn that it is?
So an Iron Man match is a 30-minute match, but it has to go that long. Like, no matter what, they're getting 30 minutes to wrestle. And in that time, every pinfall, a pinfall is counted, count outs are counted, and submissions are counted as a decision. So the wrestler with the most decisions at the end of 30 minutes is declared the winner.
So it's basically who can score the most points in 30 minutes. And I think the other thing that's historic about this, it's like, yeah, we've got a 30-minute Iron Man match, and this match is now the main event of NXT TakeOver. So the first time that's happened ever since its inception. So again, we are talking about rapidly evolving history. A bunch of historic things are happening right at once, right? So like NXT is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The women's division is growing and revitalizing. There's a renaissance. But in the middle of all of this storm, you have like Bayley emerging as this like champion that she's always been able to be. Like, she went from this weird, timid, like weirdo talking about robots on her trunks, and now here she is, the face of the women's division in a 30-minute Iron Man match, headlining NXT TakeOver Respect. So we've come a long way in the 2 years that she's been in the 2 years she's been in NXT. In the 3 months she's been the NXT Women's Champion.
I loved it so much. Shall we get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it, Samee.
Hell yeah. Okay, so for the entrances, they actually did that camera shot where you see the camera follows them backstage and then walking into the ramp, which I thought was great because they're doing that now. And it really does just create a different kind of connection with the audience to the wrestler. It's really nice. We get shots of Charlotte, Becky, and Stephanie McMahon looking proudly into the ring because this is the first women's main event for an NXT PLE. Bayley has a cape on and she's in full 49ers colors. Go on, Bayley. And the match starts. Bayley, I don't know if it was planned or not, but she kind of drops Sasha right on her fucking neck. And when Sasha stands up, Bayley goes in for a handshake and a hug, which Sasha agrees to. But because she's a damn heel, she takes a moment to get the upper hand over Bayley. And at this point, it's like, Bayley, why now?
You had to. Maybe she was like, look, I'm the champion now. We're going to do things a different way. We're going to keep it respectful. We're going to keep it nice. And Sasha was like, no, we're fucking not.
No, you stupid idiot. So after 9 minutes, Sasha takes the first pin after using dastardly tactics to poke Bayley's eyes. We don't see a lot of straight up poking, we see raking, but poking, I feel, really is a step too far.
Yeah, it is one of those things when you see it, you're just like, ugh.
It's like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah, too weird.
I think it's because, most people know what getting poked in the eye feels like. Obviously, we can kind of imagine what a suplex feels like, but a real life poke in the eye, we know it. All right. So Bayley gets her first pin after 11 minutes. And at this point in the match, it seems like Sasha really has had the upper hand the whole time. So Bayley gets a pin after doing a Bayley to belly after 11 minutes. Thus far, this match kind of feels like it's Sasha's. She's had the upper hand for the longest time, but the crowd starts chanting, "Fly, Bayley, fly." And I think you have enough experience to know that when the crowd starts chanting something, most of the time the wrestler will do it. So we're really hoping that Bayley's going to fly here.
What I love to say is pro wrestling, especially when you're at a live event, it really operates off of Tinkerbell rules. And so if you believe enough, you can really make it happen. And so I think when you chant for something, yeah, chances are pretty high that it's like within the scope of something a wrestler might do, they probably will, just because that's going to get a huge reaction.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's kind of a choose your own adventure at a live event. So we really, really think that Bayley is going to jump off the ropes, but she doesn't. She goes for a baseball slide and she gets scouted and slammed into the stairs in front of her own damn family. And because Sasha is being such a heel, she goes and smashes Bayley 2 more times in front of the stairs and talks shit to Bayley's family, much like The Rock just did at WrestleMania 40.
I wanted to point out there's this little girl in the crowd who is dressed in Bayley gear, and her name is Izzy, and she was at around this stretch of time a very beloved figure because her family would take her to all the NXT events. And so if Bayley's a WWE superfan, Izzy is a Bayley superfan. And so she would dress in all the Bayley stuff. And so Sasha going after and targeting Izzy in the crowd specifically is her just doing some wild heel work because she is literally getting in the face of a child whose only crime is thinking Bayley's pretty cool. Like, that's it. And so it's her like smashing her beloved hero's face into a guardrail and then immediately looking at her like, the fuck are you gonna do about it, kid? What a nightmare.
I love it so much. Obviously, I'm giggling like a maniac over here. Would you do stuff like that, you think?
I would, yeah. I probably would. To be
Especially
a bad guy,
as a little
absolutely
kid.
I would. Yeah. Oh, 100%. And
oh, man.
And so it's like, that's not the worst thing she does. And so the action spills outside the ring. Sasha drags Bayley all the way up the ramp and throws her into the entrance ramp LED board. And Bayley just crashes and burns on the ground. And then Sasha pretty much like dances all the way back to the ring, like reaches over the barricade, grabs superfan Izzy's Bayley headband off of her head, puts it on her own head, then slides in and then just sort of like waits in the ring while Bayley receives a count out of 10. So Bayley is just like dead for 10 seconds and receives a count out loss. So then Sasha goes up to 2 she goes up. So she's at 2 points. Bayley's at 1. And then Bayley's just crashing burn on the ground. And then you could just see Sasha like dancing and looking directly at Izzy. Izzy is weeping because she's just like, the devil is beating up my favorite wrestler and is taunting me specifically about it. At a certain point, takes off the headband, snaps it, and then like throws it back at this kid. And it's like when they cut to it, you can see the father is holding Izzy, who is just like unabashedly weeping, and he's having to be like, it's okay, it's, you know, like it's just a show, like it's all right.
Oh,
and,
man,
like,
I
Sasha
can't.
Is not letting up, dude. It is like like what a lunatic, like what a absolute supervillain shit.
The fact that she smashes Bayley into the thing that's keeping count of their fucking their match is insane. I can't even imagine the damage control that Izzy's parents had to do after the match.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, just as like a happy ending to the Izzy story, I believe Izzy is training to be a wrestler or has maybe had some matches or something like that. So
we'll keep her out of AEW because she's going to murder Mercedes Moné.
She's got some unfinished business. Yeah. So Izzy, you know, I think it did not scar her from wrestling. If anything, it made her want to get in the mix a little bit more. But yeah, that's like a unbelievable visual. So now Bayley's on the ground. She's 1 point behind. She really has to drag herself to get back into the ring.
Sasha snatches Bayley into a Boston Crab and stomps on her head while she's at it. Thankfully, Bayley breaks the hold, and while Sasha sets up for another Boston Crab, Bayley counters it and rolls her up for a pin. So now it is 2-2 with 12 minutes and 30 seconds left. Also, Boston Crabs are fucking mean, dude. Like, I know that we see them quite often, but sometimes they just settle in and you can kind of almost feel them. And yeah, these ones that they were giving to each other really made me feel bad.
Oh, we used to do these to each other all the time in grade school. I know how they feel. I 100% know how these feel, and they do not feel good.
That's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
Where does it hurt the most? Your knees?
You would go outside at recess, and you just see me and my 5 friends all just like Boston crabbing each other, and it was just like, what the hell are these kids doing? Just sitting on each other, being like, tap, how's it feel? Being like, no, I can do it, dude. I'm not going to tap.
Oh my God. Those are why you have back problems now, dude.
Yeah, now that we're talking about it, that's
exactly why. So at 7 minutes left, Bayley's hair is a rat's nest, and she's leaping off stairs to clothesline the oxygen out of Sasha Banks. Sasha rolls into the ring and launches herself right back out, and Bayley catches her and makes it somehow into a Bayley to belly and smashes Sasha hard onto the cement. Eventually, Bayley gets on the top rope with Sasha and administers a reverse Bayley Kanarana, the move that won her championship title last time. And Sasha takes the move, and then, like it never happened, she bounces right back up and does a Bayley to belly on Bayley. And she follows that up with a bank statement. And it looks like the end is fucking near.
And to set the scene, we have 90 seconds left in this Iron Man match. The score is at 2-2. So it's anybody's game. And so with 90 seconds left, Sasha Banks locks in the bank statement on Bayley.
Oh my gosh. We are seeing the pain and anguish in Bayley's face. And I would call this a really bad hug.
Yeah, truly using Bayley's favorite thing against her. Pretty devious when you think about it.
Man, Sasha, when will it end? So in the last 20 seconds, it's complete mayhem.
So we start at 90 seconds. We get to 20 seconds. So
she's still
Sasha
in the
Banks
hole.
has her locked in for a minute straight. So Bayley is just in absolute agony for a minute straight. She managed to get out of it with 20 seconds left.
20 seconds left. Bayley gets Sasha into a submission hold, cranking Sasha's fingers, stomping on her head. And right as the bell rings, Sasha submits. What an end. What a 30 minutes we just had.
It was unbelievable. And that was one of those things, too, where much in that same way I was talking about Bayley, like in that last 5 minutes, there's this whole thing where they've got 5 minutes left of the match and Bayley is just on the absolute wreckage of the steel steps, just like looking with this face of, I don't know what left I have to give here, and still has to dig even deeper within her resiliency to finally go through like absolute hell just to get Sasha Banks to tap out at the very last second. Unreal.
I can't believe it.
And so just as an epilogue to this story, so Bayley wins to retain. Sasha Banks goes up to the main roster. Bayley would continue to hold the NXT women's title for 223 days,
Great job.
all the way up until she is challenged by a newcomer named Asuka at NXT TakeOver Dallas. And if you want to know more about that, we did a whole episode about it. Go check out our Asuka episode to find out how this story ends. Spoiler alert. Not great for Bayley, but Samee, that was all about Bayley, the NXT years. Final thoughts. What'd you think?
What a journey we took. Michael. I mean, from locked arms, I think you're pretty, do you think I'm pretty, Bayley, to Bayley stomping on Sasha Banks' head and trying to break her fingers for a title belt. I am so proud of Bayley, and I am so proud of us. How are you feeling?
The reason why I really wanted to do this episode, Samee, is I feel like when we did our episode on John Cena, what we were trying to set out to prove was what makes babyfaces special. And I feel like I inadvertently completely poisoned the well against not only John Cena, but maybe the concept of babyfaces. And so I really wanted to dig into, can we find a babyface who really exemplifies what it means to do just the standard good guy tropes of trying your best, wanting to give it your best shot. And I really feel like this story of Bayley, I feel like it's accomplishing so many things, right? Because I think the Bayley story, the storyline we just covered, I think it really shows why NXT is so important, because it took maybe 2 years to really dial in that babyface Bayley character, who's just an awkward wrestling superfan. And I feel like if she had just debuted on the main roster in 2012, I don't think we would be talking about Bayley the exact same way. So the fact that they were able to help her find the character, work with her, shape her into this like beloved babyface that we all know and care about, like speaks to NXT. It speaks to the creative team working in NXT. It speaks to the talent of Bayley. And then it also speaks to like how revolutionary it is to just have like a female wrestler whose whole deal is she likes wrestling and she wants to try her best. You know what I mean? Like even that kind of feels revolutionary to what was going on in the women's division at that time. So I felt like Bayley is the perfect encapsulation of the growth of NXT, the WWE women's renaissance, and then just like what it means to be a really good babyface, which was a thing that I feel like you don't always get. And so to me, I think Bayley is the cherry on top to a perfect sundae that is like a bunch of historic things. So to me, I was so happy we got to do this episode, and we really just got to see how like unbelievably historic Bayley is as a wrestler. How cool.
Yeah.
How cool it was just to see like, oh, we got to see how a legend got made. And that felt really awesome to just check in and see.
I think what makes a good baby face is, I think it's a couple of things. Number one, a baby face has to lose. And I think that's probably why I disconnected from John Cena, because trying your best and then being the actual best is not great.
It's a tough sell for sure.
Yeah. And I think that, we just love an underdog. I think our smooth brain, our reptile brain loves an underdog. We love to see struggle. And sometimes we do, because we're sick, we love to see struggle end up in failure sometimes.
There's an old adage in wrestling, the money is in the chase. So watching a babyface chase the title is oftentimes more satisfying than watching them actually win it and have it. So that really goes 100%. To what you're saying. We had baby faces like John Cena, who's like, I believe in doing my best, and then he is always the best and he always wins. And that's just tougher to relate to than somebody who it took her 2 years to get the big win. And then when she finally did, it was incredible and she was able to back it up. And I think that's really awesome. I don't know. It really made me happy to go check out Bayley, especially since we were both so jazzed seeing her win the title at WrestleMania 40. It really was nice to be like, right, she fucking nailed it. Where did she come from? And then turns out where she came from was just as legendary as she is now. So unbelievable.
Well. We have now reached the end of our episode on Bayley. Thank you for listening to Wrestling Academy, hosted, produced, edited by Michael Classic and me, Samee Junio. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Wrestling Academy Pod. Send us an email at wrestlingacademypod@gmail.com.
You can follow, rate, and please leave a positive review wherever you get your podcasts. But check us out on Spotify, where you have Q&As and polls for every single episode. And please, if you have any information on Ween Kid, go to our website, wrestlingacademy.university, to send in an anonymous tip, or you can call the Ween Kid tip line and leave us a voicemail at 708-669-4512. Ween Kid, we know you're out there, and we're going to find you. But until then,
Class dismissed.
Is it Samee? Is that what we're doing?
Samee? I don't know.